Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know a couple of people are still joining us, but I wanted to say hello to everybody and thank you for joining us for our webinar today on how to keep momentum going and sharing our success stories from This Is Me this year. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Robin Vernon Harcourt and I am a Senior Programme Manager at the Lord Mayor's Appeal, and I lead on the This Is Me programme. So just while people are still joining us, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping bits so that we can really make the most of the time that we have together. You'll see that you're on mute and your video is off, and that will be the case throughout the webinar. But we do have the chat function, so if you're having any difficulties or want to share anything with us or our team or the other attendees, then please do use that function. We are recording the webinar today, so you know, so it will be available to any of your colleagues or anybody who missed it. And we will have a Q&A session with our speakers. So you'll see you have a Q&A function as well. So if you pop any questions for our speakers in that function, then we'll be able to come to them at the Q&A as well. So I think we've got a great group of people joining us today. So I will start by sharing the agenda of what we are going to cover today. And this is our 6th and our final webinar in our This Is Me webinar series for 2020. So really big thank you to all our speakers and all of you who have joined us, whether it's for one webinar or whether you've been with us through the whole series. And the purpose of today really is we're coming to the end of the year and coming to the end of this series is to take a moment to celebrate what we've achieved, share some of our successes with one another, and also to provide some support and tips on how you can really keep that momentum going and keep that engagement and really build on what you've done this year and in previous years as well. And we know that that can be challenging. We know that once you've shared some stories or been involved with the Green Ribbon campaign, we know it can be challenging to think about what next and how to keep that momentum outside of those key dates that focus on mental health throughout the year as well. And we know that that's been more difficult this year and than it has been, and that may also be the case in early next year as well. And that is why I'm so delighted to have some fantastic speakers with us today. Yammer Group from Fidelity and Joe Hyams from AIG, both of whom have such a deep and rich experience in doing This Is Me since 2017, and both of who will share some great tips and their great experience of really how they've built on their campaign over the past 4 years and really sustained that momentum. And as I said, we'll have a Q&A session with both of the speakers as well. So do think about questions you have from them and really tap into their expertise whilst we have their time today. However, before we start and before I introduce our first speaker, I think it's really important for us to have time to reflect on this year and really celebrate the successes that you've had in your businesses. We know many of you have been doing absolutely fantastic work, and we know that it is challenging. And I think too often, because we're so passionate about what we do, we're always looking to that next step. Okay, we've done this, how can we keep it going? How can we keep pushing this forward? And of course, that's brilliant and not discouraging you from doing that at all. But I think it's also really important for us to take a breath ourselves and reflect and look back and really celebrate what you have done as well. So I'd just like to encourage all of you, just for 30 seconds or so, just to think about something that you're really proud of this year with your mental health work. That doesn't have to be something really momentous like an event with 1,000 people attending. It could be as simple as, you know, having a conversation and sharing your experience with a colleague and then seeing them open up back to you. But just to have a think, and whilst you're thinking that, I'm going to just share some of our highlights from all of your work this year, which is really hard to do in probably the minute or so that I've got. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just a few pinpoints. The first one is due to all of your work and engagement in our Green Ribbon campaign, getting on board with us as we changed it to a virtual campaign this year. Our green ribbons travelled to over 70 cities in the UK and almost 20 cities internationally. And that's just phenomenal if you think of how many people will have been seeing those green ribbons in those cities, knowing that we're not alone, knowing that they've got a support network, and knowing that it's okay not to be okay. So really amazing, and that's all due to all of you getting involved and working on that so passionately. We've also had over 65 businesses share stories this year. I'm sure that number is even greater. This is just from our annual survey. And that's a lot of those are companies doing that for the first time this year as well, which I think is even more impressive in the year that we've had and with lots of us working remotely. We've also had our first This Is Me films that have been filmed remotely and filmed in our virtual offices of our homes, which has been really fantastic to see. And we're delighted as well that This Is Me launched in Yorkshire just last month in October, and we've already had 45 companies register. So really seeing that growth of This Is Me across the UK is actually really testament to your work that you've been doing in your workplaces, but encouraging other people and being that example for your sectors to get people involved. And one of my key highlights is that the team in Yorkshire have launched a podcast that's available on Spotify and other platforms. So do have a listen to that if you haven't already. They've got some great tips on there as well. And just finally, I think a key highlight for me is how we've really seen all of you, all of your organisations, all of the organisations working in the mental health space really come together this year to collaborate and work together to share messages of kindness and hope for ourselves and for others as well. And having messages from the Lord Mayor and the Mayor of London amongst those as well. It has been really fantastic to see that engagement. So those are a few of our highlights. I could go on, but I won't. And what I'd like to ask you all to do now is in the chat function, just to share your key highlights, something from this year that you're particularly proud of with your mental health work, whether that's through This Is Me or other activity that you've done. And when you look at your chat function, the default is to send it to all panelists. But I'd really encourage you to change that and share it with all panelists and attendees so that we can all share and celebrate in our achievements as well together before we look forward. So I'm just going to give a minute or so if anybody wants to share anything they're particularly proud of, or just a challenge that you've overcome. Great, we've got some coming in now, which is brilliant to see. Creating support networks with individuals in groups, brilliant. Fantastic. So Kate from London Stock Exchange Group is saying nearly 300 mental health champions globally trained, amazing. Launch of an internal mental health and wellbeing resource hub, including This Is Me stories. That's brilliant, Zoe. So whether you're comfortable sharing, and if you don't want to, that's fine as well. But I'd really encourage you to take 5 minutes for yourself this today and celebrate yourself, because so often we are looking after other people in our organisations with this work. But I really want you to encourage you to do that. And thank you for everyone who's sharing. This is a really nice boost to the day. So as we have now looked back and shared some of those highlights, it's a really great opportunity to now think, okay, so we've achieved a lot. We can see that in just these few messages we've got in the chat. And how can you as organisations really build on your successes and really push this forward into next year and going forward? So we've got a minute or so here just for us to think together, what are some of those challenges that you think you may be facing, or you are facing, or you think you may face when you're thinking about your activity next year or building on what you've done? And again, I'd love you to pop those in the chat function so that we can see, are we having common challenges? Are we facing the same things? Do we have a diverse spread of different barriers or challenges? And that really helps inform our speakers as they're sharing with you. And it's also something that we can come back to together in the Q&A and look at some of those challenges as well. So we've got some great ones being put in here. So volume of information that people are receiving. So absolutely, I think we're aware that people are getting a bit of a Zoom fatigue as well. So how can we reach people with the right information? Being a small company as well. So how to encourage people to share. Supporting colleagues in a virtual environment. Yeah, absolutely. These are all great ones coming through. And as you said, Stephen, as well, the effect of the pandemic on both our physical health, but our mental health and what that looks like going forward as well. So thank you, everyone. Please do keep continuing to pop your thoughts in there and we will try and come back to them. But this leads really nicely onto me introducing our first speaker, Gemma, who I know has such a wealth of experience to share with you and will be covering some of these challenges that you have raised. Gemma works at Fidelity, who have been involved with This Is Me since 2017. They have created such an array of This Is Me storytelling campaigns. I'll let Gemma go into more detail, but four different This Is Me films and a range of other activity as well. So Gemma, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate your time. And I will hand over to you to share your experience and tips with our group today.
Thank you. Am I on screen? I think I can see I'm on screen now. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to come along and speak today, because you're absolutely right. We've been involved in this campaign for, well, since 2017 now. So, and again, I guess that's testament to the success of the campaign, but also the momentum that it breeds, because actually we're still going strong for sort of, well, it was our 4th campaign this year, but effectively 3 years later. I do think one of the most powerful things of this whole campaign, along with any discussions about mental health, is about the fact that it's bringing it down to that very human level and just recognising that we're just people, that we're all vulnerable, and it's just helping to have those really healthy conversations and look after each other as a whole, and not just that kind of work colleague that we see. I thought I'd just start by taking us back, or taking you to where we started, which was back in 2017. It was happening for a time with us. I was actually co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Network at Fidelity at the time. We were just coming away from being very focused around gender balance, and we still are, but that's a separate thing, you know, but we were looking at what more can we do around diversity and inclusion. And having polled our staff around what mattered most to them around topics relating to diversity and inclusion, mental health came out, you know, just so far beyond everything else. And it's definitely made us realise that we absolutely needed to do something. For us, and I appreciate it's not the same for everybody, but for us, we used the This Is Me campaign as the real catalyst for change. So we did kind of go off with a bit of a big bang. That's not to say we did that quickly, but what we did was, when we latched onto the campaign, we listened to other companies who had done it. We started to then engage, number one, from a grassroots perspective with our diversity and inclusion network. We engaged with our sponsors, who were typically, you know, senior management, to really get their buy-in for going live with this campaign. And then we pointed very much towards October, which was Global World Mental Health Day, and that was our big launch date. And actually, back at that time, it probably wasn't that easy finding people to take part, because talking about mental health in the workplace, it kind of wasn't really done. And we relied very much on the network, members within the network, and we relied on sort of word of mouth for people to volunteer. And actually what we had coming through was actually some senior support once we'd started to speak to our sponsors, that actually they were willing to step forward and speak as part of the campaign. I think it's fair to say that we've never looked back, and I can't explain for anyone that hasn't done a This Is Me video. We launched with a big bang with a video, and the buzz, the enthusiasm, the energy that came from it was incredible. And I guess that's one of the things I feel slightly sad about having done it this year, is that in that virtual environment, and I've seen it come through in the chat, how do we replicate some of that energy when we're not together? Because, you know, I certainly found that it was so much harder this year to do that. Not to say that it wasn't successful, but it's a new challenge. So we once we went live with the campaign, keeping that momentum going in that first year, we had people stepping forward saying, I want to be part of this. This wasn't then a case of us finding people, they were finding us. And so we started a monthly blog, a This Is Me blog, with people choosing to sort of share their story through that format. And, you know, they were, you know, highly viewed, they were highly commented on, and similarly to the video, you know, lots and lots of interest. And then we started this kind of formal campaign, if you like, that then ran on. So it was things like a formal webinar program. Yes, we absolutely needed funding. We were able to secure funding. We relied quite heavily on external groups helping us to run those webinars, because we're a group of volunteers ultimately, and we needed that. We needed to try and make it as easy as possible. We've partnered around the Green Ribbon campaign. We launched mental health champions groups, and again, I've seen it in the chat that this is what some of you have also done. And we launched a mental health first aiders program. And, you know, that was very, it kind of all spiraled, really, this like snowball effect from really that launch in the October. So needless to say, 2018 was super busy for us, embedding a lot of that more formal change. And I guess, you know, what we've done ever since is we've still committed to every October we launch a video, and the videos are, you know, still so powerful, along with the blogs. And the reasons why, we all know this, but I'm just going to remind everyone, because, you know, I've never seen anything that is as powerful, which is that sharing real stories as a way of educating people really has the biggest impact. But what I would say we've done is that we've shifted probably in the last couple of years to that less formal program of work, to making it more informal. So we've looked at, you know, further developments of This Is Me, and I think it's fair to say This Is Me on its own whilst it's fantastic, it does need that ongoing drumbeat all the time. So whilst we now have that kind of formal program running, the informal stuff is now proving to be as popular. And it's all along the similar lines of what the This Is Me campaign is all about. We have people now blogging regularly, right from the very top of our organisation to the very bottom, who will talk very openly about their struggles, how they're struggling, particularly in a virtual environment. Just last week, one of our you know, very senior directors chose to blog about the fact that he's really struggling. And people find that so reassuring, to realise that actually we're all the same. It doesn't matter what level of the organisation you're at. It doesn't matter who you are, your background. You know, we're all susceptible, we're all vulnerable at various stages. So some of the things we've done, we have some of the more informal stuff just to share with you, to maybe, in case this gives you some thoughts for your own groups, is we launched tea and talk sessions. That was a lot easier, if I'm honest, when we were in the office, but we would literally book out an office, we would bring in tea and cake, and we would encourage people to drop in and have a chat with us. And it was just that break within the day to come and talk in an informal way. We've continued those virtually, and we've adapted that to more of a virtual drop-in session where people can just come along and chat to people. And we're seeing some good success around that. Other things we've done, we've launched a Yammer Group. So again, this is that move away from formal to really informal. So we have people regularly posting on Yammer. And again, the colleague who I referenced from last week posted this on Yammer. And this goes globally. So again, these are brave things to do, but the response is, you know, it's almost kind of, in a way, therapy in itself. And then I guess for us, some of the biggest changes, and particularly this year, outside of the fact that we have been virtual, and that is a very real challenge and continues to be a challenge for us, we managed to go global this year for the first time. And And that was interesting because we have to recognise that culturally, not everyone is in the same place as we are here in the UK, with that kind of openness towards mental well-being. And I don't know whether I'm saying that just from a fidelity perspective, or whether that's something that others are experiencing that too, that you know, we are quite, you know, there is that kind of openness, and whether that is for, you know, 3 years of This Is Me and the campaigns we've been running that's helped us to get there. But there is this culture of openness. There is this culture of acceptance that, you know, we are all susceptible to mental ill health at certain points in our life. Whereas in some cultures that is still very much a taboo subject. So for us to go global this year was a really, you know, a huge step forward. And so, you know, that is absolutely one of the successes, but we had to tailor the This Is Me video to make sure that we align to where they are in their journey. So whilst we are quite far, I believe we're quite far forward, they're at the very beginning. So we adapted it to focus around things like more around a well-being theme, around diet, exercise, speaking to family, finding a trusted individual to talk to, but really just opening dialogue. And that has had a huge success. That doesn't mean that we've solved it. For us, that's almost the next catalyst for change that we're now working on, which is how do we continue to drive that global kind of focus. But I guess just to wrap it up, and I will hand over in a moment to Jo, that, you know, I guess the key to our success, I think, has absolutely been, you know, senior leadership support, a group of volunteers then at the grassroots, really that regular drumbeat of change, regular activities focused around mental well-being. And then the last thing is really not, you know, we sometimes overthink these things. We worry too much about what the impact is. Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? How will people perceive it? We've just learned to just crack on and do it. And actually, so far, it has been entirely risk-free. We have had so much success from this. And that, you know, so my advice is just really to go for it. You know, the videos particularly are just so impactful. Not just for the individuals who are taking part, because I mean, I took part in year one. It is therapy in itself. It's absolutely incredible. But the second thing is what it does for others in educating them and recognizing that we're all the same. We're all vulnerable at some point, and it's important to share. So I will pause and I'll hand over to Jo.
Gemma, thank you so much. You've shared so much in such a short space of time, and it's so inspiring to hear and see your journey over the last 4 years. And I loved how you've really shared how you focused on a really formal program where you had a plan to share stories every October, and how you then, as that formal program developed, you created those informal opportunities to share as well. And I think that's so key. Having that formal program then leads to that culture change to allow those informal conversations to happen and that informal work to continue, which is brilliant and fantastic that you launched globally this year. I love how you tailored your stories to focus on topics that are appropriate to the different cultural contexts as well, and really interesting to see how far you in the UK have gone over the last 4 years and how you can bring that along to your other offices as well. Yeah, and I love that you have people regularly blogging as well, so sharing those stories constantly outside of obviously having those more formal This Is Me films as well. So thank you so much, Gemma, and I will I could share many more reflections, but I won't, because I'm going to hand over to Jo now, and I will leave some of my questions for the Q&A. But just a reminder to everyone, if you do have questions for Gemma, do pop them in the Q&A function. And I'm delighted also to have Jo Hyams here from AIG. Similar to Fidelity, AIG have been supporters of This Is Me since the beginning, have done fantastic work since 2017, both on the storytelling, the green ribbon and other support as well. So Jo, I'm delighted to have you. Really, thank you very much for your time. I will hand over to you because I know you've got a lot to share, and then
Brilliant.
I will look forward to chatting to you both in the Q&A.
That's lovely. Thanks very much. And hello, everybody. First of all, as Gemma said, we here at AIG are very honoured to be included in this series and to be included indeed in the final one. When Emily rang me and asked me about AIG and the This Is Me campaign, the first question was, well, how and when did you start the campaign? And the first thing I said was it had nothing to do with me. So what happened was, and in fact, I'll explain why this was quite an inspirational personal thing for me as well, that the former chair of the Disabilities Employee Resource Group, at the time we had 5 ERGs, Iowa Morgan was the chair of Disabilities and Allies, she saw on social media that the This Is Me campaign was launching, and in 2017, launching the This Is Me videos. And she thought that would be a great goal for Disabilities and Allies. And as Gemma said, you know, mental health was just not on the discussion table at that point. So she thought that was a great goal. And what she did in the first instance was she put together a panel. And it was very hard for her because she wanted to get a panel of senior AIG staff who could sit and talk about the mental health issues that they'd had. She did manage, and I'm very pleased to say Iowa is on the call. She did manage, and if anyone knows Iowa, they'll know that she would have managed anyway, to get some very senior staff involved. And the panel overran by 1 hour, not because of the lack of preparation of the panel, but because of the feedback and integration of the audience, that the audience started telling their stories during this, and it was so successful it overran by an hour, at which point Iowa posted on our Yammer page, as part of the This Is Me campaign, we want to make a video for This Is Me. We have no budget and no one with any experience. If you have any video experience, please write to me. And I wrote to Iowa, and we had a conversation. She said, so in fact, at that point, I'd had nothing to do with employee resource groups or Disabilities and Allies, except previously I'd had some experience with mental health when I lived in Oxford. And she said, so, hi, Joe, nice to meet you. I understand that you know how to edit videos. And I said, absolutely not. I have no idea whatsoever how to edit videos, but I think this is a great idea and it sounds like a lot of fun. And so that's how we did it. The two of us got a panel together, that we filmed in various parts of the building. And as Gemma launched their campaign for World Mental Health Day 2017, we launched that video that evening as well. And it was a huge success. We had a large crowd. We had a lot of senior management attending the launch. And I think that's super important. I mean, frankly, the fact that senior management participated was a key, in my view, to the success of that video. Because when you see people who are successful in your company, who are high ranking in your company, standing up and saying, I have had mental health issues, and some of these issues that they'd had that they were open to exposing on video were extremely harrowing. But when people do that in an organization, everyone else can say to themselves, well, if they can have mental health problems, I don't need to be embarrassed about it. And so this film had a huge effect. It was almost as if we discovered, or let me say, Iowa had discovered an elephant in the room. An elephant of the room of people who would not associate as disabled in any way, in fact, would associate as allies, but actually do have issues from time to time, be it for a day, be it for a week, be it that they just going to bed early, not wanting to socialize. And instead of saying to themselves, maybe I have an issue here, maybe I have a mental health problem, they are saying, I'm too embarrassed, I need to be stronger. This is my problem. I'm not going to put this on everyone else. Men often say, this isn't very manly to have a mental health issue. And this video was one of the huge opening doors for AIG staff to start saying, wow, mental health issues affect everybody. They can affect people who admit to having a disability or a mental health disability or mental health issue, and people who would normally say that they were allies of that. And that had an extraordinary effect in the whole company, a snowball effect, actually. The first thing that happened for us was that it was suggested by HR that every induction we run, which was monthly, and in fact still is monthly, we play that This Is Me video. And that was a huge benefit, because it meant that, A, we had something keeping, that video was keeping the whole issue fresh the whole time. But not only that, it also meant that new staff coming in to AIG absolutely understood where we were as an organization in terms of our view of mental health issues. And that was very reassuring. In fact, I actually did several inductions and actually did the whole presentation before showing the video. And many people in the induction would come up to me afterwards and say, well, actually, I've had mental health issues myself, and it's really reassuring that you place so much emphasis on it at such a high level, of buy-in. Another thing that we were very proud to get going was that Iowa applied for funding for mental health first aiders, and she got complete 100% funding. And that is ongoing. So in every office in the UK, AIG has assigned mental health first aiders to whom staff can go along in privacy and in confidentiality to discuss any problems that they had. And I believe that that's also encouraged AIG's more, if you like, institutionalized policy of employee health, which has been over the last 3 years, certainly since 2017, massively expanded in terms of not only what AIG offers people for mental health solutions and for their issues, but also in terms of the formalization and institutionalization of the concept of mental health. It's not an elephant in the room anymore here at AIG. We follow, I became more involved with Disabilities and Allies and have loved working with Iowa so much that she's now my business advisor and I'm a co-chair. She's moved on also to Insurance Disability Ability and Wellbeing Network, IDAWN, which we also work very heavily with in the City of London. So we used to stand at reception of our Fenchurch Street office to hand out green ribbons, and we were very committed. We thought that was a great way also to follow up on the video. You know, people walking around the office with a green ribbon. It's just such a great visual reminder for everybody, and it just kept that freshness that mental health is not something that we hide away, that we're embarrassed about, but it's out in the open. It's part of, and it's a normal aspect of our modern day lives. And as a result, mental health is a major company issue. It's also a major employee resource group issue, not just for Disabilities and Allies, but for LGBT, for our generations group, for our young professionals group, for families and carers group, and for our African and Caribbean network. They have all embraced mental health, and especially this year with our new normal, a lot of ERGs are posting and putting on events for mental health, which has been a huge, huge success, a snowball effect, in fact. We followed up by making another film, actually, which wasn't purely about mental health. It was about Disabilities and Allies worldwide. And I'm going to come back to This Is Me video in a second on that, but just to say what we wanted to do was, instead of separate mental health from the other disabilities that we represent, we wanted to make sure that formally it was included. So we made a worldwide video with various offices. It was really another great fun project that we put together that is also used worldwide to talk about various disabilities that we are dealing with at AIG, or at least our staff are dealing with. You know, and I've got a note here, it just says mental health sufferers don't suffer in silence. You know, I mean, like I said, that elephant in the room, that floodgate that opened when Iowa saw on social media the This Is Me campaign has had such a huge effect, not just in terms of our UK induction, but for example, of that video, the This Is Me video has been shown regularly in the US. It's been shown regularly in New Zealand. in fact, various other countries, and particularly it's been shown in countries where mental health is actually very stigmatized. The Disabilities and Allies reps in those countries have been using that video to some extent educate the staff in that office that there is no stigma attached to mental health. So our success stories, I mean, they're wide and far reaching. This Is Me has made a massive impact on AIG, not only for our induction, because it allows us, in fact, This Is Me has allowed our new employees to learn who we are. This Is Me equals who we are as far as our induction program is concerned. It's allowed us to formally bring in mental health first aiders, and also has increased the amount of commitment that the company has made. For example, 9th of October this year, AIG worldwide gave every member of staff the day off as part of a mental health day off program, which, you know, I mean, it was from our perspective, we were humbled by that. Advice. Well, I think there are a few things I wanted to say about advice, and then I'm going to wrap up so that you can ask your questions. In fact, the things that really made a difference to us were starting as a small group isn't such a big disadvantage. Watch it snowball. Start with events that are storytelling, and you know, as Gemma said, storytelling events are so meaningful in an organization. But the real advice that I want to give you is just realize the value. Realize what value pushing this program will give to the people you work with, and to the organization, and to the pride that people will have working for your organization. This is a massive, massive thing. Like I said, a bit of an elephant in the room. And the biggest advice I can give you is just to understand how important and how much change you can create by following this program. We're a more inclusive workplace now. We understand mental health is an aspect of modern life. All employee resource groups are involved. We have made AIG a home and a community that accepts mental health as real and addresses it. And thank you, This Is Me, for allowing that to occur. Thanks very much.
Joe, thank you so much. That was really inspiring to hear everything that you've been doing at AIG and to see that journey as well. I love that you're playing the films at inductions. That's such a fantastic way to set the tone for anybody who's joining your company. Following the videos up with your giving people the green ribbons, like you said, as a visual reminder. And I really love how you said that, you know, you've shown your video regularly. And I think sometimes we think, oh, if we've done it once and we've showed it once, can we show it again? But to keep showing it regularly, showing it in different offices and adapting that format to look at mental health and disability together is fantastic as well. So thank you so much, Joe. And I'd like to invite both Gemma and Joe, which are both on screen already, brilliant, for our Q&A function. You've both shared so much, so thank you firstly for that. And I'm just going to ask you both, before I go to the questions from the group, if you're thinking about next year, thinking that we might still be in a somewhat virtual remote working, if you could share with our group what's one thing you're going to do next year in that context to keep the momentum going in 2021, what would it be? Could be something you're already doing, or it could be something different.
Gentlemen first, Gemma. I think that one of the things that we've been super keen to do is internationalize this campaign. And that has been already extremely successful. The stigma of mental health, it has reduced, but is still existent in the UK. But in some countries, it's incredibly prevalent. And we are already, first of all, we've created a time zone bubble with our Dublin Disabilities and Allies group. So we are working very hard with them with all our campaigns. But, you know, we want to make sure that we spread this word, this passion that we have found within the UK to other countries. I think that's really what we're planning to do.
Great, thanks, Jo. Gemma, from your side.
Yeah, and from our side, it's a similar position to Jo, in that we are really pushing on that global focus now. Examples being that, you know, outside of the UK, we don't have a very high concentration of mental health first aiders, so we're really keen to expand that. And really helping to just encourage that conversation. So looking at regular blogs, you know, how do we get more people speaking up? The second thing for me is that we want to put more focus around that, again, that I come back to that informal conversation. So again, we're virtual, so the importance of picking up the telephone, speaking to our colleagues, just checking in on them to make sure that they're okay. And we've seen a growing pressure in our line management teams to feel that we absolutely need to equip them to have those types of conversations, again, without overthinking it. That, you know, it's really important that we're connecting, and it's not connecting via Zoom, and it's not connecting via a Teams call, it's picking up the telephone. How do we check in to make sure people are okay? And again, it's that shift to more, you know, I guess for us, the big shift this year has been, and will continue to be, it's that informal piece. We all have a duty to each other to look after each other. So again, it's more of that focus of making sure that if we're spotting signs of change in an individual, not being afraid to approach, have a conversation and ask if you're okay.
Yeah, that's so important, that connection at the moment, and how we do support one another in this virtual environment, and that people are equipped to do that. So that's brilliant. We've got a question here from Kate that says, you know, with the focus that we've had on the Black Lives Matter movement this year, which has been fantastic, how can we bring out the diverse voices within our mental health work? And if either of you have experience of doing that, focusing on our Black colleagues, we know racism impacts our mental health negatively. So just any experience you may have had in trying to include a range of different voices and how you went about it.
Well, we're very lucky at AIG because we have an employee resource program, which I spoke about. What I find interesting is that during this year, every resource group has done two things. First of all, it's concentrated heavily on mental health and the health of people who are not used to working in the environments that they are working. I mean, I've got a cat, that's bad enough, but you know, some people have children sitting on their laps during meetings, during big AIG meetings. The other thing that we've done very, very heavily and increasingly is collaborate. So in fact, we have an event today where every ERG is collaborating and advertising on a mental health event for male mental health, in fact. So in that sense, I don't know where you are, Gemma, but we're extremely lucky that the infrastructure is set up. And we took the lead, but people have picked up the baton and started running as well. And we collaborate very heavily with them.
We're in a similar situation. So what we've recognised, I guess, on our journey is that whilst we initially focused on mental health as almost a separate stream, what we now see is that it goes across everything, and we see that it's aligned to every diversity and inclusion work stream that we have running. So it's how we collaborate on that on an ongoing basis. And what that means is that when we run activities that are focused around mental health, we do get a lot of very diverse panel. If I think about our campaign in October, you know, the diversity, I mean, I was so proud of the diversity we were able to show from that, from a male-female perspective, from a cultural diversity perspective, from an age group perspective. I think it goes across everything. So we're learning how to bring everything together, and that mental well-being really sits across all of it, as opposed to something quite separate, because we absolutely recognise the linkage between the two.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think using those employee resource groups and collaborating on that is really important. So that's brilliant. And we're coming to the end of our time. So I'm going to ask our audience to give us 2 minutes extra of their time and ask you both one final question. But if you could keep your answers relatively brief, if you can. From Stephen, who just said, what is your biggest blocker that you had, and how did you overcome it in your journey? So if you can think about your challenge that was your biggest, and how you overcame it.
That's a really great question, because I know it sounds really cheesy, but I don't think we've had any blockers. I mean, I'll let Jo answer this one first, because I don't think we've had any. I mean,
Gemma, this isn't tipping point, you know. I think the only blocker that we experienced was the belief that we might not be able to do it. We just never realised what an absolute snowball effect this would have. And very easy to say, you know, we're asking people, senior members of staff, to expose very private parts of their lives. They're not going to do that. We're asking people to accept that because they are feeling embarrassingly low, they actually have some level of mental health issue. They're not going to do that. We're asking people to come along to events and open up, not just from the panel, from the audience. They're not going to do that. And guess what? They did, and they did. And our disbelief, our thought that this might be too much work, that we are too few to make this happen, it might not have any effect. That was the only blocker we experienced.
I think the only thing I would add to that is that there is still, you know, a considerable sort of group within Fidelity, even in the journey we've taken. There's still a mindset with some people that this isn't about me. I don't have a mental health issue. This is someone else's problem. This is other people. It's not me. I think that this year, with the impact of the pandemic, we are tapping into a new audience who have never admitted that they have any form of mental ill health, and for the first time they may be experiencing those symptoms for you know, as I say, for the very first time. So I think it's about when we're trying probably to get this thing going and getting that momentum, there is still this group that say there's not a problem here, you're overthinking this, but actually it's about really believing that and being ready to challenge. And then I think, you know, similar to Jo, the success we've seen off the back of this just shows how big an issue this really is, and that it is absolutely the right thing to do, and that we really should all be doing this in this modern day.
Absolutely.
Thank you both so much. We could carry on for the rest of the afternoon, I think, but I will bring the Q&A to a close there and just say a really big thank you to Jo and Gemma for your time, for sharing your experiences with us and all the amazing work that you have been doing. And just to wrap up, to say a big thank you to all of you for joining us today. We do have a feedback poll that will be appearing on your screen now that just has a few questions about how you found the webinar today. And that's just really helpful for us because it means it helps us make sure we're developing the support that you need and making this series better and better for next year. And just while you're doing that, I just wanted to close by saying, you know, as we're coming towards the end of the year, as it's been a tiring and challenging year for all of us personally and professionally, just wanted to share some resources for you yourselves on the call, but also to share with your colleagues. The winter period and the holiday period can be challenging anyway. That may be the case even more so this year. So the NHS has created a range of wellbeing webinars that look at topics sort of coping with the pandemic, really. So looking at things like anxiety, depression, sleep problems. On Every Mind Matters, they have a great mind plan that you can create, a short sort of quiz you can do to give yourself a MOT, a mental health MOT, which we'd really recommend everyone doing at the end of the year to see how you're doing, as well as sharing with your teams. And just to really say a really big thank you to all of you. As this is our last webinar, I will wish you all a lovely, well, rest of the day, but also rest of the year and hopefully a restful break. We'll be back in January, so looking forward to seeing you all then. But if you have any questions, need any support in the meantime, do feel free to drop me an email, drop our team an email. We'll pop the email addresses in the chat. We're here to support you, and just really well done to everybody for all your hard work this year. And I just wanted to close by sharing a quote from an employee who works at one of the organisations who shared a This Is Me film this year. So you can all see the difference your work is making. They said, "Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for organising and participating in such a powerful and moving event. Your stories really touched and resonated with me, and I so admire your courage and honesty in speaking about your experiences. This will make a huge difference to all of our attitudes to mental health, and I know will certainly help end the stigma. So thank you, that's where I'll leave it today. So thank you to all of you for continuing to support us, support This Is Me, and helping to end the stigma in your workplaces. Thank you.